Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major! Welcome to another episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they released. Today we are talking about Chelsea Walls from 2002. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And returning guest, super special guest, is Phil Iscove from Podcast Like It's 1999. How are you, sir?
Good.
Yeah. It's been 5 minutes. It'd be like, did something happen?
Yeah. No, not much has happened on my end, but still happy to be here.
Okay, cool.
That's very kind of you, considering that we made you watch Chelsea Walls, so apologies.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it wasn't fun. It was... on top of like the film being a bit of a slog, also technically frustrating as well, in the sense that I had to airplay it off of my computer onto my TV, and
that's how Ethan Hawke would want you to watch it. Actually,
yeah, this movie visually was already kind of dog shit. So then you blow it up onto my this isn't me bragging, but on my 75-inch television, it looked like fucking pixelated, like you wouldn't believe. So it was it wasn't ideal.
I go to bed thinking about it, I wake up thinking about it.
This place is supposed to be a hotel for us.
I think I'm gonna be here for a while.
I think about you sometimes when I walk by.
Well, I could come over sometime. Sure.
You lie to me.
I'm staying this time.
We have some nice guests here.
Why do they call you Lorna Doone? Ain't that a cookie?
I do not need to be patronized like this.
Baby, if it's me or you, it's gotta be me. I want all the possibilities of you in writing. I want so much I'm breathless.
I have this reoccurring dream. It reminds me of you.
I'm in a real predicament. I'm scared to death to love.
I just feel like I'm, going nowhere fast.
There's something beautiful about a man who loves too much.
I want to be there, but I just can't.
We were older and we were happy.
Why are you wasting your life away? And you know what? He was right.
I don't know. I was watching the film, and listen, like, I couldn't really tell. Nothing really happens, first and foremost. Like, you'll talk about the plot, I guess, but it's just a bunch of people that all lived at the Chelsea Hotel. There's some nice stuff in this, and I hate to, like, damn this with faint praise, but, like, I do get the impression that, Ethan Hawke and the actors involved are all, passionate actors, and you really got the sense that they wanted to show up for him, that they wanted to do something interesting, that they were excited about exploring the material. Ethan was obviously very excited to be working with, Chris Christopherson and with, his best friends, Robert Sean Leonard and Steve Zahn. Exactly. It's just very hard to really connect with it. And this is one of those things where, like, we talked a little bit on tape about plays as movies, and there is something about, and this is going to sound maybe more dramatic than it should, but when you're held captive in the theater with a piece of material and there's no way to look away, right? I mean, outside of either leaving said theater, falling asleep, or what have you, you need to combat the thing that's in front of you, right? There are real people in front of you acting out these emotions, and the theatricality of the situation can lead itself to a more exciting situation. But then when you film it and you lose that, and that electricity of a person in front of you acting out these scenes, you're left with something that can feel very flat.
Yeah.
I literally texted Kevin and Bryden the exact same thing, where I was like, I can't imagine if this was as bad as it is on stage, because you have to endure all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my guess is it wasn't bad on stage. I mean, my guess is that these situations, again, we can talk about how there are lines that fall like anvils, and I think part of that is the direction, but part of that is when you're writing a play and when you're writing a movie, that's a different animal. Right? It just is. Mm-hmm. When you're sitting in a movie theater, I mean, it's one thing. When you're sitting in a theater, I went to see a whole bunch of plays on Broadway earlier this year, and it's a completely different animal, right? The rope you're willing to give a theatrical performance versus a movie performance is just drastically dissimilar. So it's that's why, like, I was watching this movie today just being like, I just feel bad for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Because they're all being kind of hung out to dry a little bit. Like they're just not being given much really to, like, I don't think that there's any bad actors in this movie. I mean, I think that oh my God, why am I drawing a blank on her name? Rosario Dawson, who's, I think, a great actor and doesn't generally get a lot of great stuff to do. I think for reasons that seem kind of beyond me, she just seems to be, she lands in odd projects. And again, like, not given enough to do here. It's just tough. It's a tough movie to watch because you're just like, I want to care.
Boy, howdy, I want to, but I just can't. Yeah. Anyways, great way to sum it up your initial thoughts, because I have a feeling that everybody's just going to be like, yeah, what Phil said. Yeah, what Phil said. Yeah, what Phil. Yeah. Yeah. Premiered at Cannes, May 2001. Interesting. At South by Southwest, March 2002. So this movie online gets listed as a 2001 movie, but technically it went to theaters in 2002, but opened to 3 theaters on April 19th, 2002, and it expanded up to 6 theaters. Nominated for Golden Camera at Cannes. Budget, once again, is $100,000. Opening weekend, $10,000, and a domestic gross of $60,000. And top 5 films that weekend is The Scorpion King, Changing Lanes, Murder by Numbers, hell yeah, The Rookie, and Panic Room, also hell yeah, but...
That's a great one. Yeah.
Well, yes, but does it have a monkey that assaults Sandra Bullock in it? No, it doesn't. Okay, that's Murder by Numbers.
That happens in Murder by Numbers?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a baboon, I believe.
Yeah, a baboon in Chris Pine's house. Is it Chris Pine?
Chris Penn.
That would be weird.
I have never seen Murder by Numbers, and whenever I hear the title of it, all I can think of is that subplot in 6 Feet Under where Ruth dumps her boyfriend because they go to the movies together, and he says, I'm going to Blade 2. You go to Murder by Numbers. and then she's in Murder by Numbers and goes into Blade 2 and was like, I'm breaking up with you, and then leaves.
Why can't they go see both? Both are great movies.
Yeah. 6 Feet Under. I miss 6 Feet Under.
Oh, me too. And at the same time, they're trying to revive it, and I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't miss it that much.
They're not going to revive it. I'd be surprised. I mean, I listen. I guess honestly, obviously, anything is possible, and Lord knows HBO would love to have another Alan Ball show on their air. I imagine, but I don't see a world unless you're doing a prequel about Ruth and Nathaniel before they have kids or something.
Sounds boring. Yeah.
What's it called? 6 Feet Above?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also just like they literally, the show, I mean, spoiler for people who haven't seen 6 Feet, the show ends with them all dying. Like it's there's no more final an ending for a series than the one that they had.
Exactly.
But yeah, Murder by Numbers, I feel like I saw, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. So
you don't remember Ryan Gosling's red leathers? Oh man.
No, I don't remember.
It's not good. It's not good, but it is fun. I forgot to do this in the last episode, but number 1 song in the US this week was Foolish by Ashanti, which kicks ass. Number 1 song in Canada this week is a Canadian group I've never heard of, so maybe one of y'all can help. Moving On by the Boomtang Boys.
I don't know that.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
That should tell you something. You have 2 Canadians on here, and neither of us have heard of that band, so...
Yeah, and then for Tape, I forgot to do it, but number 1 song in the US for Tape was Family Affair by Mary J. Blige. Great song. And then in Canada, Completely by Serial Joe.
Don't know them.
Don't know that.
What the fuck? So wild.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, 2002 is a weird year.
Yeah.
Because obviously what happened in September of 2001 had a pretty significant effect on the industry and the type of stuff that they were making. So like you had a bunch of stuff that was developed in the pipeline, shot, and then you were sort of like, how do you know what I mean? Like it's just it's a weird year for movies. I'm trying to remember 2002.
I remember Spider-Man came out in May, and they had to like completely film a separate sequence because Green Goblin and Spidey were supposed to fight on the World Trade Center.
wild.
Well, there was also the teaser trailer that had the web in between the World Trade Center. I mean, it was just also like, if I remember correctly, so 2002 is what wins the Oscar? That's Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah.
Which is just insane, because there's like 2002 also gave us Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can, and neither of which get basically any Oscar nominations.
Punch Drunk Love, we get 25th Hour.
25th Hour. We get like fucking The Pianist. Like, it's just it was just such, and like The Hours. I know there are Hours stands out there, but like whatever. It's in Gangs of New York. Like, it's just a weird year. It's just a year where you kind of get the sense that like no one really knows what's next.
I will go to bat, though, and say Chicago is a better movie than A Beautiful Mind, which won picture and director, and the directors that year that were nominated were, like, David Lynch for Mulholland Drive, Robert Altman for Gosford Park, Ridley Scott for Black Hawk Down, and Peter Jackson for Fellowship of the Ring, which is, like, Ron Howard, the best of all of those.
For Moulin Rouge, which is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, one of the most indelible Oscar moments for me was David Lynch getting up from his chair to put his arm around Robert Altman as Ron Howard accepts his Academy Award, where you're just like, something is off, something is amiss here. That being said, I would gladly have given the Academy Award to Ron Howard a few years previous for Apollo 13 and save us all the pain of A Beautiful Mind. But yeah. This is just one of those years where, like, it's funny because you talk about how you were saying, Kevin, about so Chelsea Walls premieres at Cannes in May of 2001.
Yes,
and then sits on a shelf for basically a year.
Yeah,
and then gets released in a total of 6 theaters. This is one of those things that you can point to and say that maybe it's a good thing about the streaming world that we live in today, right? Like, there's a part of me that feels like a movie like this, which, again, I'm not writing for Chelsea Walls, but I will say that, like, $100,000 movie that's a small, intimate piece about, I don't know, fucking love and anything you want it to be about, it's about, I guess. But, like, this is such a primo thing that should just go straight to a streaming service. You would have made your money back. You didn't have to pay for marketing. You'd have to pay for making 35mm prints and sending them. Like, it's just like it's and I know that it's all changed, and I'm not sitting here saying that I'm against the theatrical experience. I'm not, but I do think that, like, movies like this fit into spaces now that they didn't back then, and have opportunities, I think, to hit more people.
Oh yeah, totally. And in the commentary, which is just all Ethan Hawke, which is 1000%, you're just like, oh well, is he really like that, or is this just the source material? No, it's him. He's pretty much saying, like, I just wanted to do this so I could learn about making movies, and you're just like, I can see that. Like, this feels like a Tribeca ass movie where it's just like, this actor wants to be a director, and it's just like, maybe not. I don't know. But
it's like, do we have to watch it? Do we have to watch you try?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to, but this podcast forced us to. But
yes, unfortunately.
And he didn't get. I mean, as we mentioned, the actors. I mean, Chris Christopherson, Tuesday Weld, Natasha Richardson, Rosario Dawson,
Kevin Corrigan. Hell yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like love Corrigan.
Really, I mean, they're all trying. They all showed up. Like, and I say that I'm being serious. Like, they're trying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course they are. I mean, yeah, that's. Well, I'll bite my tongue until we get to initial thoughts. Yeah.
Real quick, directed by Ethan Hawke. His first directed film after this, The Hottest State in 2006, also with Mark Webber. Blaze in 2018, and like Phil was talking about, The Last Movie Stars this year, written by Nicole Burdett, adapted from her play. She also co-wrote a movie called Maze in 2000, starring Lauren Linney. Besides that, she's mostly stuck with plays and some acting, like she plays Barbara Soprano on a few episodes of The Sopranos, and starring way too many fucking people. The funny thing about listening to both the tape and the Chelsea Walls commentary is that everybody calls Robert Sean Leonard Bob Leonard, and I don't know why, it just made me laugh. But yeah, Chris Christopherson, Vincent D'Onofrio, Uma Thurman, and many, many more. Trivia from the commentary, which was, like I said, just terrible. Shot in 18 days. Hawke said he wanted to make the movie to be a collage and thought of it more as a double album.
I mean, it's very impressionistic. I mean, I don't say that in a shitty way, but it is. I mean, he's sort of doing what he wants to do.
And he was like, when you're making a double album, I had to get the best person that was making music at the time, so I got Jeff Tweedy, and I was just like, sir, hold on. But
I like the score.
What, are you shitting on Wilco now, too?
Oh, yeah.
Your fucking new metal nonsense?
Wait,
yes!
Yeah. Wait, you're shitting on Wilco?
Yeah.
I will say, so I didn't know it was Wilco until I saw the end credits. The thing is, I think I'd maybe like the music if it was soundtracking literally any other movie. As is, it just makes it like, because it's really like, it is kind of an abrasive sounding score. Like when it's just like these grinding guitars and like pounding drums and everything. I can like that sort of like intense atmosphere of music and everything, but when it's soundtracking just like these like inane rantings that are going on like in like the elevator, I'm just like, I feel like I'm being assaulted on the eyes, the ears, like my mind, and just like, because like there's no substance here. I just felt like it was kind of like terrible, like altogether. But like if it was in another movie where the material was worthier, I would maybe be more into it.
The score is one of the few things that actually made me feel something watching this movie, but I love Wilco, I'm a sucker for indie rock, I like Jeff Tweedy, so there you go.
Like there's a Wilco lyric that is written on the wall.
The ashtray says you've been up all night or whatever.
Up all night.
Yeah.
Which is a great song and a great lyric. I mean, listen, it's no Limp Bizkit, but let me tell you.
It's not. If I could talk to Jeff Tweedy, I'd be like, have you ever heard of drums? Put them in your music. Anyways.
Anyway, I think that the truth is like this is a fucking emo movie with a capital E. So it makes sense that he would go to a lyricist
1000%.
whose music wears his heart on his sleeve. Like that's no surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another quick bit is Hawke says this with it just completely serious, and he was like, it's a movie where it's all about trying to make these stories fit together, but even though they don't, they're so close together yet so far away. I almost threw my phone out the window.
I don't even know what that means. That sounds interesting, I guess.
Yeah, it's just anything. Like everybody's living together and they should be a community, but they're so far apart,
That sounds like something that his character in this movie would dunk on, because like at one point Uma Thurman's like talking about like the romanticism of like the Chelsea Hotel, and then like he says like, what are you, asleep over there? Come on, what are you talking about? It's like he's supposed to be an asshole, and I'm like, yeah, like no one's saying anything of note here. It's like it totally makes sense.
So many times in the commentary he talks about how people have knocked the movie for being indulgent, which he also said the first cut was 3.5 hours, so he was like, if people thought I was an indulgent, then it could have been a lot worse. And I was like, well, thanks. I don't know. The song that
it doesn't matter how long this
no, go ahead.
This movie could have been a short film and it would have been indulgent. I mean, length doesn't matter when it comes to, I mean, it does matter. Thank God it wasn't the 3.5 hour cut, but it's still like no amount of shortening this thing would have been, unless it was 1 second, as if that would ever happen. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
I digress.
Hawke wanted to call the movie Chelsea Walls Asterix, and then at the bottom of the poster it would say Asterix, or The Insufferable Hunger of the Damned.
Fuck.
Gosh.
And he was not kidding in the commentary when he said that, so.
We clearly didn't get that the fact that these people are starving, because it's not like they say that out loud to a certain character multiple times. Yeah.
Well, and he says that during the scene where I forget her name, that she's talking to that other person, and they say it like 4 or 5 times, The Insufferable Hunger of the Damned. And I was just like, yeah, just make that the title, just beat it on the audience over the head. And lastly, the assistant director thought of the Humpty Dumpty line that Chris Christopherson ends the film with. You should have fired the fuck out of your AD after that. That line is rough. I think that was the most that I had trouble with.
There's so many bad lines in this. I mean, at a certain point, I just started to basically be like, well, okay, so this writer didn't so much adapt her play as reformat it and put it in final draft, it seems.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I know that that's a shitty thing to say, but like you have to, it can't just be a 1-to-1. Like, you have to think it's a different medium. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're Glengarry Glen Ross and you have, and listen, I mean, I have my issues with David Mamet right now, but his Trump nonsense aside, I do think that like that play is a fucking masterpiece. You've got like some of the best actors of their, you just turn a camera on and say the lines. Like it works. You can't do that with this. This is just it's on top of the fact that it just looks like such shit. But anyway.
I know, and I do love DV movies, but he's not doing anything interesting with it.
Except like saturating the colors. Like
I forgot. Hold on. While you mentioned the colors, he said in the commentary he wanted everybody. Hold on, I got it right. No, I don't actually. Right here is he said he wanted every decade to have a different color. So Chris Christopherson's whole thing is just like desaturated. Uma Thurman and Vincent D'Onofrio, they're supposed to be in the 70s. Rosario Dawson is supposed to be in the 80s, and Bob Leonard and Steve Zahn is supposed to be in the 90s.
Wait, the whole movie is taking place in different timelines?
I literally was like, I did not convey.
No. It's supposed to be like, in Uma Thurman's room, it's supposed to be like the 70s and whatnot, and then in Robert Sean Leonard and Steve Zahn is supposed to be in the 90s.
Play at all.
I missed that. No. I mean, there's like maybe like I guess it works with like maybe emotional temperature where it's just like the melancholy of like the Rosario Dawson Mark Webber marriage where it's like just all blue, like every scene is just blue, but like it just like gets like one note after a certain point where it's like, yeah, it's just the one color. I don't find this interesting to look at. And yeah, like Tape, I mean, like that's like, that movie does like have sort of like an ugly quality, but I do feel like there is like an intentionality to like its ugliness and up closeness and everything. But like I feel like there's like germane cinematic choices being made here in that film, but here it's just like, I don't know, they'll have Chris Christopherson like super slowed down and then just like hard cut like an anvil to like some guy just wailing at a jazz club, and
that was the worst.
It's just like agony because it's like there's no rhythm to it.
I feel bad because like this is such. I made a short film in between my first and second year of film school that was called Paper Walls. It was literally about 3 different hotel rooms, and like it's such a fucking pedestrian, obvious thing to write. You know what I mean? It's such a like, what's a cheap, easy thing to do, but it's so reliant on dialogue. It's so reliant on having just unbelievably 3-dimensional characters with unbelievable performances. Like you're setting yourself up to fail if you can't knock this out of the park.
Yes.
Yeah, the movie I thought of was one that we had talked about in our last miniseries, The Center of the World, which is also like shot on TV and mostly takes place in like a hotel room. And like that's a movie where like, again,
Molly Parker?
Yes.
Yeah, and Pierce Sarsgaard. Yeah, and like that's a movie where like you think about like if it's very dialogue based, but it's like if these actors don't like connect, it like the movie falls apart, and they connect, and that movie has its problems, like which are
mostly good,
yeah, but like it works because their chemistry is like there, and I feel like there is like, I mean, it's Wayne Wan who's like a pretty like experienced, and he's like 20 years into his career, so like he knows how to like move the camera and like cut things together, so he knows how to make the conversation seem dynamic. But yeah, like Chelsea Walls is like the inverse of that, where it's like what happens when like your actors don't really have the right chemistry and like they're all not really bringing the energy. Sure. It's just, and the film just like doesn't work compellingly as like on a visual level.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this too, like on the visuals, it's hard not to like think about when it comes to like DV and the transition from like where we were in the late 90s, early 2000s when like it was straight up DV to like that mid 2000s when like people like Michael Mann were really pushing digital as far as it could go. And he loved that. Like, I mean, look at Miami Vice, right? Like Miami Vice is the best you could ask for in that time period. And then we obviously crossed a Rubicon, and now like you can barely tell the difference between digital and film. I think most people will be hard pressed. Most people will be hard pressed.
Yes.
You put them next to each other. This is all to say that like this film falls smack dab in that period where like if you want to be impressionistic about it and you want to kind of play with the blotches and the kind of this like messiness and what have you, you got to go the route of Tape. Like Tape at least has like, you can tell that there's real framing devices going on. Like one of the shots that I'll always remember in Tape is at the end when he's flushing all the weed down the toilet, and there's that extreme close up right in the bowl of the toilet of all the like balls of weed. and it's just like and it looks just grainy as fuck, and it's gross, and it's just like you got to embrace the texture of digital, otherwise there's no point.
Yes.
Well, I noticed in the opening credits it was it opens with a quote, "an under the influence film," which made me think, okay, Hawke's gonna try and be Cassavetes in his first try, and it did make 100%. Me think about that with how even you watch a Cassavetes film today, and like I remember the first time I watched Woman Under the Influence just being like, oh, is this all improv? And it's like, no, he always knows where to place the camera and where to compose, you know, certain people, even in claustrophobic tight shots. But this felt like Ethan Hawke filmed it almost in an improvisational way. I don't want to say that he did. I don't know if he did or not, but it definitely felt like I can be loose like that, where it's just like, well, the beauty of Cassavetes is that it feels loose, but it's all highly controlled.
Well, that's also the beauty of Linklater as well. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
And exactly. I think that he's looking at Linklater and he's saying to himself, yeah, I could do this, right? And again, like this is the thing about, I would even say it's a problem that Linklater has, which is that his stuff is deceptively simple, right? Like there's something very sort of like, and even he trips up from time to time where he's like, yeah, I can do this. And then it's like, no, I can't. And I think that Ethan Hawke spent a lot of time around Richard Linklater, making a lot of films with him, and didn't really know sort of how to do the things that Linklater knows how to do.
I did think about if Linklater, like if he did call Linklater up and was like, hey, check out my film, and like what Linklater would have said to him. Because I'm sure
Linklater's in the movie. He's in it. He's one of the guys in the car.
Yeah. But I keep forgetting that. See, I was watching this movie forgetting certain people were in it, where Natasha Richardson comes back after an hour and I'm like, oh, right, she started the movie off. Like, whoops, okay. So,
my guess is that, you know, I'm sure Ethan Hawke never asked for Linklater's opinion on set, but like you have to wonder whether or not Linklater's sitting there thinking like, well, I wouldn't do it this way. But I mean, it's his film.
Well, yeah, it's the thing of Tape and Chelsea Walls is that Linklater's going out of his way to not make Tape just initially boring to look at, because it's all set in one location. It's going to get boring, but he knows how to do different types of shots and all this type of stuff where you never really get bored of seeing the same exact four walls. And in this one, there's just nothing being done where it feels at all. If there wasn't any color, I would think that they were all in the same place, that it's just really lazy.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, Brydon, you mentioned the whip pans and Tape, which is something I specifically thought about the second time watching it, and how that does keep the dynamic and the energy up of the conflict and in the conversation that they're having. And here, it's just like, it feels like point and shoot. It really doesn't feel like. Which, I agree with you, Phil. It also makes me feel bad because this is so clearly sincere and so clearly something that Ethan Hawke, it feels like Ethan Hawke's pouring his heart out, and it just doesn't.
I was curious because, I mean, Hawke's like subsequent movies have gotten like better critical reception.
Oh, yeah.
Have any of you seen any of his like follow-up films? Because I'm curious.
I have been watching the recent documentary, which is really good.
It's improved, I guess. Yeah, that's nice.
I mean, but it's also like, you know, doing a documentary is very different than doing a narrative film. The short answer is yes. I do think he's evolved as a filmmaker. I do think that like he's learned some stuff along the way. You know, I don't know what it says, that probably my favorite thing he's ever directed is the music video for Lisa Loeb's Stay. But
yeah. Of course. Yeah. It's pretty great.
It's a banger, guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Let's get into initial thoughts real quick. The good thing is we don't have much plot to get into, so there's that.
There's no plot.
Well, no, not at all. Rosario Dawson's boyfriend says once in the movie, like, how do you live like this? And that's pretty much how I felt like the whole movie. I told you on the group chat that this feels like a parody of like early 2000s indie movies, and yeah, so many characters going through like existential crisis, and I'm surprised that every character didn't say at like one point, like, I know I'm good at something, but just haven't found out what. Like, I'm very surprised by that. Like we mentioned, the music is just really grating. It's not even the music quality, it's just how it's used. It's just used very annoyingly. We talked about the Chris Christopherson intercut with the guy singing, and yeah, it's obvious that Hawke was drawn to this because of the music aspect, because then he went on to do Blaze, and also his movie before that is also about a musician and whatnot, but just hasn't quite known how to put music in a movie quite yet. While of course, like, I love movies shot on digital video, this is just used in the most boring and plain way possible. It made me appreciate the cinematography of, Center of the World and Chuck and Buck more, knowing that DV could be used in a way that's like impressive and innovative, used for a purpose, not just to use it because it's cheap. Also, not to mention, like we were saying, the dialogue is either just saying things that are happening in the most boring ways possible, or there's just poems being said over voiceover for like 5 minutes straight.
Yeah.
Literally, there's a line where Rosario Dawson says, like, when you say I love you, I want to believe you mean me and not just New York City.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It'll be like they'll be saying something very banal, but then just like mixing up the words so like, to make it sound like the Frank Willie line where he's like saying, about 4 a.m, the other night, finished my vodka. The bottle, that is. In other words, I'm referring to the bottle. And I'm like,
shit.
Like, oh my gosh. Like, it's just like, that's the movie in a nutshell.
But yeah, to finish off, like, I really fucking hated this, and this was a slog, and no one comes out looking good. They're doing their best, like Phil was saying, but it all just feels like auditions for a high school play, honestly. Like not since we watched Ringmaster. This has been
it's very
worst.
film school. Like
yes.
you're watching it and you're just like, yeah, I had a lot of these notions in film school, and I get it. I really do. I understand why, like, he thinks that these are original. I get it. They're just not. But,
Yeah.
He says in the commentary, like, mostly to kind of combat the people that say it's indulgent. It's just like, I don't know, they're just really interesting to me, and I'm just really drawn to the type of people that, are just not in the place where they want to be. It's just like, sure, but you could do it a little interesting. That's all I'm saying.
I'll say this. We talked about this a little bit on tape, and I, as a writer, really do respect when someone decides to make something that, for all intents and purposes, doesn't adhere to the narrative structures that we
of course.
expect, right? And I think that that's bold and adventurous, and I'm all for people wanting to run with the art form. Like, that's really exciting. I mean, it should be exciting. And again, on paper, maybe he just had. I just think he got over his skis. I think there just wasn't that much there. The play that this is based on isn't all that compelling, and doesn't adapt well to the screen. So he was really, he was behind the 8 ball before it even started.
Yeah, I rewatched Slacker last night, which is a movie. When I first watched it, I really didn't like it, and this time I did like it for the most part. It does kind of suffer from I wish I had something to grab on here, but it's still pretty fascinating for the most part. And then I feel like
it's
this
is movie.
Yeah, I feel like this is Ethan Hawke trying to make Slacker. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's him trying to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think he also my guess is he was like, I'm not going to try to do fucking Titanic right out of the gate. I'm going to try to do something small. I'm going to try to do something intimate, something where I can really direct the actors, something that's, he's a big theater guy. Like, I understand all the pulls towards this material. But as we've said, not to keep belaboring the point, but as we've all sort of said, like, if you can't find a way to dial that up and to get me really physically involved with these people, it's just a bunch of talking faces. It's exactly. Behind blotchy, shitty digital footage. Like, it's just, it's really hard hard to do.
Yeah, really. I mean, before Brian and Charlie, I'll let you get your initial thoughts. We can sum up the plot so easily. Is that Rosario Dawson and her, you said husband? I thought it was just boyfriend. I'm not sure. But he keeps coming and going. He's like, oh, I'm staying this time. No, I'm not. Okay, I'm going. That's pretty much it. And then Chris Christopherson and, oh God, what's
Tuesday Weld.
Tuesday Weld, yeah. They're having a whole thing. He used to be an alcoholic. Actress. Yeah, she hasn't been in anything, I think, since this movie, which is wild.
She's great in Thief.
Amazing in Thief.
yeah. But his entire thing is just, I don't drink, and then he starts drinking. That's pretty much the end. Uma Thurman just keeps getting hit on by everybody in the hotel. That's her entire arc.
In a terrible wig.
Yeah, that was the most upsetting character for me.
Yeah. Goodness, who else? Oh, yeah, the Steve Zahn and Robert Sean Leonard kind of feels like the most overarching one, even though it's the most boring.
I guess. I'm still not entirely clear, like, what happens and why he dies.
Oh, yeah, and
Kill himself? I don't. It's not.
It's unclear.
Yeah.
It's completely unclear.
Well, yeah.
What's worse is that I didn't care, but...
Well, yeah.
I mean, not to be, like, glib about it, because, like, obviously that's a terrible thing whenever that happens to someone, but, like, yeah, the movie doesn't... no one feels like a real person in this. It all just feels like kind of, like, collection of, like, writerly, like, like, sort of sayings.
And Hawke said in the commentaries, like, I really wanted the end to be, like, ambiguous and who is it who dies, and you don't really know. I was like, it's pretty obvious it's Leonard, but sure, man. As the cops say at the start.
Say whatever you need to say.
Yeah. Another terrible line is the start when the cops show up and they're just like, is it a suicide or an overdose? And the other cop goes, all suicides are overdoses, or all overdoses are suicides. And I was like, okay, dude.
Just like the kind of thing you'd imagine, like, just someone, like, doing a blunt rip afterwards, like, think about that program.
You ever think about that? Yeah, man.
There's a like a cop would even say that too, like at the time, like just showing up to a crime scene like that. Like, there's a difference between like someone like in the movie Ambulance that Michael Bay made, where it's like, who's been shot? Where it's just like, of course, it's Michael Bay universe. But like in an intimate drama like this, it's like, no cop talks like that. Like, you know,
ridiculous.
Like,
yeah. And then after I finished the movie, on the DVD there was the trailer for it, and the trailer made me hate it more. It's because like it's like the 2 hours of it got condensed to 2 minutes, and then I was just remembering everything that was terrible. Like, they highlighted Chris Christopherson at the end, which the end scene is like the worst part of this entire movie, is him, like, his publisher or agent or something comes over, and he's just like screaming. He's like, I will not have you patronize me. No, I will not. And I was like, boy,
I'm not a baby.
Yeah, oh my god, it's so terrible. But yeah, I can keep going on. But Charlie, initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we've covered the bases. I mean,
okay, and Brandon, initial thoughts?
Like Phil, okay, but like Phil, it made me feel bad because we've covered a lot of bad movies for this podcast. But when I've hated something, it's genuinely like, okay, this is either just garbage that was made to make money through a studio system, or it's just morally reprehensible. And this just made me feel bad because I love Ethan Hawke, and he's been very open about certain risks he's taken and failures that have weighed on him and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how he feels about this movie, but yeah, it clearly is like nobody was making this movie to make money. It's like Ethan Hawke clearly felt passionate about this material, and they wanted to make something that would move people, and they knew making this thing that not many people would see it, that it would cost like $5, and like but yeah, mirroring what everybody has said, I mean, nobody talks like a real person. It's just a bunch of conversations that feel stilted and contrived. I mean, there's one moment where they're making where Chris Christopherson and Tuesday Weld are making a toast, and Tuesday Weld says, "Here's to everyone thinking that they know everything and they don't know anything at all." And I was just like, okay, I got that.
Cool.
And now
hell yeah.
That's just what the rest of the movie's gonna be.
It's just the movie. Nothing to the overarching theme of the film is no one understands anything about life, and then you die. And that's just I mean, sure, I guess, but like, what am I supposed to take away from this movie? What am I supposed to be feeling about any of these characters?
Yeah. Anyway. And it especially made me feel bad because I actually personally get really annoyed when someone writes something off as pretentious, because I love so much pretentious art that's done well, where I kind of feel like to use that word is a bit of a cop-out to say, with the way that most people use it is,
sure, yeah,
this movie thinks it's smarter than me, and I know I'm smart, and fuck you, movie, for thinking that, where I don't. Just the way people use that word feels wrong and inaccurate to me at times. I love so many quote-unquote pretentious movies or pretentious artists. I mean, and I love that they are pretentious, but
this is some pretentious
But this
shit.
is what made me mad wasn't that it was pretentious, but that it made me feel bad because it wasn't working for me, and it does have that air of just self-importance when it isn't, as the Tuesday Weld said, it's not saying anything at all, and just so many, like, all of these deep things that these people are thinking and feeling. I mean, I don't even need the poetry to be good, but the movie clearly thinks it is, and there's just lines. There's the one time I actually, like, burst out loud laughing.
Hell yeah.
Is a montage in which Rosario Dawson and Mark Webber are reading poetry, and it keeps cutting back to Mark Webber reading it, and Rosario Dawson says, "I want water up to our waists, and I want to be drenched by the rain up to our ankles with holes in our shoes," and it cuts back to Mark Webber going, "Holes in our shoes," and I was just like, first of all, this is terrible. Second of all, who the fuck wants to be up to your ankles with water and holes in your shoes? That's the worst feeling in the world. Like,
I do get, it's very high school drama. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's just, and listen, like, I don't know. It could have worked.
Yeah, but the movie is so clearly asking you to empathize with all of these people who don't have personalities because they all sound exactly the same. They all have that same voice. Totally. It's monotonous, you know? You get to the end of the movie and you're like, well, I don't know anything because these were all the same character and nothing has happened. So, like, I don't know what the takeaway is supposed to be. You know, Rosario Dawson sounds exactly like Chris Christopherson, who sounds exactly like Natasha Richardson, who sounds exactly like Uma Thurman, and that should not be the case. These are all very different, multi-talented actors who should all be, having
this is what you were saying
voices.
About Dogma. Right?
Oh god, yeah. Well, it is actually the same thing as I was saying about Dogma. Is they're all where Dogma they all sound like Kevin Smith. Here they all sound like Nicole Burdett and Ethan Hawke. I mean, it just there's no because I love and I know Kevin. I was thinking the exact same thing where I love Slacker because I love just the slice of life where nothing really happens in that movie, but it feels alive. It feels like completely rich with just what could happen if you were just to stumble upon these things in the city of Austin in a single day. And while some of them are a little more heightened than others, I believe it. Here, it's also just so. The level of sadness and just melancholy with everyone is struggling in contrived ways that just suck. I mean, we mentioned the Uma Thurman character. You mentioned it specifically, Kevin, that she's getting hit on by all these people, and then she has this piece of shit boyfriend who I'm just like, why is she even in a slice of life movie like this? It's like, why is she with this person? But also, I know exactly that the movie's doing that to make you ask that. And then even stuff like the Chris Christopherson character just being like, oh, don't worry about me, I'm not a mean drunk, where it's like, well, like, okay, but like, why would Uma Thurman even put up with this? Because the movie's so in love with Chris Christopherson's own misery. Where if I'm sorry, if any man, even if you know them, just kind of comes into your house at night and says, can I just use the bathroom, and then just sticks around while she's like, I really need to get some sleep, you're clearly drunk, and she's like and he's like, I'm not mean, I promise, where I'm just like, red flags ablaze. But also, this movie doesn't even think about, like, the reality of that situation. It just is so in love with Chris Christopherson's wounded puppy dog, I'm a sad alcoholic writer bullshit that every other character has in this movie, that it just completely took me out of it to even buy any of this as genuine, even though that's what it's aiming for. It's not meant to be. It feels so artificial when it's clear that it's so coming from a pure place, which is what made it so upsetting to slog through. And then half of the rest of the movie is just dull, and I kept forgetting certain people. Vincent D'Onofrio shows up and I'm like, oh yeah, you're in this movie, right?
He's a painter.
All right, yeah, completely forgot about you. Like,
yeah, he can't be bothered, he's a painter.
And again, it's just the monotony of it all. Just a very it was a depressing experience because it's so
for multiple reasons.
yeah. I'm done.
Bryden, quick initial thoughts.
Yeah. This was terrible. Like, I'm sorry. There's no nice way to put it. This movie just like, it's terrible. Like, yeah, pretentious in the sense that it's like it's reaching. There's nothing wrong with like reaching for some sort of like profundity or like trying to stretch yourself artistically. And like I guess Hawke is trying here. With like when he like does like the slowed sort of like pixelated like frame shots of like when like it's. Robert Sean Leonard and Steve Zahn like drunkenly driving around in their car, or like cutting between like the fury of a jazz performance and like Chris Christopherson like drunkenly ranting in his house. But like there's just no real, nothing important, nothing of any weight is being said here, and I don't think like it's expressed interestingly, in terms of like theme or character. I mean, it's the kind of thing where like Frank Whaley will get like a shot where he's like lingering in the background of a club, like lighting a cigarette, and like it's while like another band is performing, it's meant to be like it's framed like it's like this significant thing, but he doesn't feel like a real character. Like I don't know why that's supposed to be significant for him to have that kind of shot in the movie. A better movie would make that work, and it's the kind of thing where I just feel like I think basically every actor in this movie has given a performance that I have liked in any other work. And like it's the kind of thing where like occasionally they break through their material. Like at one point, like Dawson, like it's just like it'll be just like individual performance beats when Rosario Dawson's like woken up from sleeping by Mark Webber calling on the phone, and like she sort of like is like half asleep and like but sort of like murmuring like, "Oh, I missed you," and like she's sort of smiling, and it's like actually like kind of a nice moment. But then like it's immediately torpedoed by like just like this stupid bullshit where she's just like, "I had a dream about Vietnamese soldiers breaking into my room," and I'm just like. Fucking crikey. I mean, like,
and then she goes, yes, they were Vietnamese. And I was like, what?
No, that is the moment.
She says Vietnam soldiers. Yes, they were Vietnamese. I was like, huh?
Yeah, that is a moment that made me shoot up out of my gaze and was just like, what? Like, this movie's not about the horrors of Vietnam or anything like that, but I was just like, yeah,
that's true.
The movie's about everything, Charlie.
But I was just like, but why? Like,
about everything.
Why? Yeah,
because it doesn't know what it wants to be about. That's why. It's exhausting. But the truth is that like that's just the playwright again. Like when you're in the theater and you can't show stuff, you have to tell your audience things, right? And in movies, that's not how it works because you can, in theory, with a budget, be able to actually show things rather than just tell people things.
Right.
This whole movie's tell.
And also with the theater, it's just like maybe some of the more pretentious, corny parts, you would have been like swept up in the energy of it all to kind of excuse it. But with here, it's just being that there's literally just a screen to watch it on. It's just so... You're just so cut away from the performances, even if they were tried to, linger onto you. So yeah, it probably definitely works more as a play. But
the only performance that really has any kind of energy is honestly it's Ethan Hawke. Like, even though he's like, over the phone, it's just most of the kids he's just screaming over the phone and everything. Where he's like, "Why? I can't hear you over the fucking plane or whatever." Like it's like, and that's, he's supposed to be like an insufferable character, and like he's like caught up in his own like self-absorbed bullshit and everything. But it's like. I guess he's an asshole because he doesn't care about everyone else and everything. He's like more upfront about it, but it's like he's like at least kind of funny in the movie. But like everyone else is just like in the same like mopey register, and it's just like it really becomes monotonous.
They all sound like they're on downers, which maybe they are, but like it really does sound like they're all drugged on something. Which I get. Christopherson is an alcoholic, so that makes sense. But everybody else is in that mode. Like I don't see them.
And again, like the whole movie being about people who are like all lonely and struggling to connect, even though they're all in the same building and vaguely connected and dealing with their sadness. Like that is like that could be a compelling idea for a movie, but like it is just like the way it's not what a movie's about, but how it's about it. And it's just like the dialogue and the performances and the filmmaking are just like dire on every single level. It's just, so it just makes it kind of insufferable to watch, but yeah.
And you even think about, like, you just mentioned, Phil, about how the film is telling and not showing. I mean, is it just that even the Natasha Richardson stuff, where it's just that weird close-up of her face, where it is just her saying words? And I don't want to take away from the late Richardson's performance. I know she was trying, but it really isn't doing anything with the visual medium. Where you think about, like, even this is not something that seems entirely fair, but you even think about, like, silent films, about how they didn't use dialogue. It's all, like, I mean, even fucking Passion of Joan of Arc, it's like, yeah, that most of that power comes from, like, just, you know, facial expressions. And here, it's like the visual look of it and the murkiness of it all just completely does no service to the actors, because it's too obsessed with its own half-assed, grainy look that you can't even really get a specificity on, like, body language when it comes to how, you know, these people are trying to act out this inane dialogue. Like,
Yeah. Now, Phil, I know you're upset that you can't cover this for podcasts like it's 2002, but I'm very glad that you were able to come on for this.
Listen, I'm thrilled that I got to cover this film and never think or talk about it again.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CT Nash91. Once again, thank you for listening.